Yeah, dear colleagues, thank you for joining our third session right now. Yeah, I hope you have seen already our red line throughout all the three sessions. So we are also following certain kind of scales that we would like to address within the session. So we started yesterday with a very policy level scale. We had this morning with a more regional or policy tool and instruments and planning scale. And we will now move on over to our third session, which will be on a local scale. So deliberately on the local and more or less micro level, we want to focus right now. So it becomes more and more also very practical oriented. And our idea was to raise a bundle of real good experts from around the world to let us know about their experiences on techniques and concrete measures for urban-rural revitalization. So this will be our guiding framework of our third session today. Before we start, please allow me again to point on our housekeeping rules. Those who attend via Zoom, please switch off your microphones again. And I would love to see questions and discussion, but we will put this in the end. So please, if you have questions towards the particular presenters, please keep the questions for the final round of Q&A in the end of our session. We have enough time reserved for that. Yeah, another point is still to announce for organizational purpose, please use the button for joining either Chinese or English translation. If you enter the Zoom, you will find a button where you can choose between Chinese or English interpretation. And I think this helps to even communicate more and better between each of us. Yeah, let's start with our session. Our first presenter is Professor Christian Werthmann. He's working at the Institute of Landscape Architecture at the Leibniz University in Hannover. In his academic work, he develops strategies for landscape and public space in self-constructed neighborhoods. And we are pretty happy to have him here. Hi, Christian. Because he will address the laboratory approach, and he has really in-depth experiences in using and implementing and applying already this laboratory approach in an international context. He will show us an example from Colombia, which is again pretty good because it reflects on ground what we heard yesterday from our colleague from Colombia about policy. Yeah, Christian. 15, a few minutes longer, but please be in time because we want to have a good buffer for presentation discussion in the end.
I hope you can all hear me, and thank you very much for the invitation to this conference. I'm right now cannot hear you guys.
Christian, thank you very much for the introductory talk. And I'm pretty sure there will be more questions regarding the lab approach. Maybe, therefore, I would really love to ask you to think already about what makes such a living lab really successful in the end. And maybe we can take up this point of the living lab later on during our discussion and answer question-answer session. So, Christian, thanks very much. We will move on to Professor Yang. Guiqing Yang is head of the Department of Urban Planning and principal investigator of the Urban and Rural Development and Rural Planning Research Team at Tongji University. Most of us, we know you, but let me introduce you briefly because we might have some new guests in this third session today. His current research concentrates on Chinese rural vitalization. He's really an expert on that, with an interdisciplinary perspective of sociology and urban planning. And he will give us some detailed insight into a case of the Huangyan Orange Garden, and he puts this case study into the headline, Thinking of Multiple Paths in Urban-Rural Assembly. Professor Yang, please.
Thank you very much. 尊敬的各位女士们、先生们，
Honorable leaders and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon.
德方好，我们
Well, this is for German friends. As for Chinese friends, good evening. So, thank you very much for giving me the chance, actually 15 minutes, to give this presentation. As for our project, well, it is based on Huangyan, Zhejiang province. So before I kick off my presentation, I'm going to mention some basics of our department within Tongji University. So the College of Architecture and Urban Planning, Tongji University, has 55 teachers, and we also have 100 plus postgraduate and PhD applicants or candidates. So we are at the forefront of urban planning in China. We're also having a global vision. So we have nurtured a bunch of outstanding talents. And in 2001, we organized the very first international symposium on urban planning. So our project is based on years of partnership with TU Berlin. So back in 2014, in November that year, we co-built Sino-German Germany Joint Research Center for Rural Settlement Planning. So professors from TU Berlin, together with us, began our exploration of the synchronized development between rural and urban areas in Zhejiang province. So basically, this is multidisciplinary process. This is also multidisciplinary tie-up. So hopefully, from this kind of work, we can gain more insights into theories and practice in this field. We can also strengthen our partnership in terms of research and teaching. So you can see those pictures. We took those pictures in the villages that we revamped or we reshaped. So start the local government, which is Taizhou, local municipal government. We did a lot of experimental studies, and we also take into consideration of the local policies. And we also got support from local dwellers, and we also did a lot of designs. So actually, we did quite a lot of avant-garde kind of experiments. So those experiments are quite shining in our achievements. So for example, we came up with some pillar examples for other places to study, especially in this process. We built up our partnership, a very tight partnership with TU Berlin, especially URA is actually one of the most important witnesses. And we also have more experts from both China and Germany to be engaged in this project. So this is why, this is actually the solid basis that we have built for URA. So with 18 months of development last year, starting from May in Taizhou, in Huangyan Village Rejuvenation College, which is inside the village, which is also the place that we hold meetings to discuss relevant information. So basically, the idle resources or out of fashion resources are going to be reused within those kind of villages. So to start with, let's get into the background. We know that this is against the backdrop of urbanization. So urbanization in China has been there for more than for that the urbanization rate every year has been more than 1%, and right now it is already 60% of urbanization. So because of this, then the urban-rural spatial structure is also changing, and that also gives rise to changes of relationship between urban and rural areas. Because of this kind of development, and we can see that the development in both areas is not necessarily that even, so we can see some conflicts. So here we can see that by improving infrastructure in some places, in some local places, we can see urbanization trend. So for example, we can see those red dots. So in the north, that is Beijing. In the south it is Guangzhou, and in the middle, we can see that in the east middle, we can see it is Taizhou. Taizhou is very close to Shanghai, so 3 hours of bullet train between the two cities. So here you can see this is where Taizhou is. And so here in this picture, you can see this is the map that we used. See where our projects are located. So it's within one district. So when it comes to Taizhou, we can see it is, well, 10,000 square kilometers. As for Thuringia, that is almost the same coverage. As for the population here, it is more than 6 million. And as for Thuringia, that is 2 million. As for Huangyan district in total has 10,000 square kilometers, so 1/10 of Taizhou. As for population, it is 600,000, also 1/10 of the total population of the city. So we can see how important this place is. So here you can see this place highlighted in orange, our base, which is Guiqing. So we can see this is actually a southward outreach of urbanization. And we can see this kind of corridor kind of development. So in this backdrop, the original farming so how can we keep the original culture and keep the original heritage and keep the traditional industries and sectors? And meanwhile, when the city is urbanizing, the park can be part of the city. And meanwhile, it can also keep what makes it unique. Then, so this is something that we should think about in the urban-rural interface.
A lot of things are covered by the expansion of urbanization or touched upon. So we hope that in the industrial structure or the spatial structure, we can achieve a kind of balance. And that is why we introduced in the concept of the interaction role of the rural-urban interface. That has to have a prerequisite that the countryside or the rural area has a better knowledge of the role it plays in the process of urbanization and the role it plays in the neighborhood or community around. It has a lot to do with the local culture that has long been accumulating in the locality, and that is why we introduced this this roadmap of a rural complex. The definition of rural complex first. Nationally, there are supportive policies for the establishment of rural complex, and in the process of actual establishment, we value a lot the cooperation between the residents and the industries. For the rural areas with originally highly growth points so that there can be orderly growth. So here we need to combine the original existing agriculture with the new technologies. Some combinations have to be made. And agriculture has also to be combined with a tertiary industry. For example, there has to be interaction between agriculture and cultural tourism. And then the interests of the residents have also to be taken into consideration. And based on all these, we formed a general structure for the practical implementation from the spatial intervention to the participation of the residents. And these are our strategies. This place itself is along the line of urbanization sprawl, and the status quo at that time was that this place was covered with orange trees. Oranges are very famous products in Huangyan. The place itself is famous for the oranges, and such culture has been deeply implanted in Huangyan for thousands of years. And local people like planting oranges too. But these oranges are now under huge risks in front of industrial expansion. A lot of places have cut down all the trees to replace these trees with industrial zones. In the short term, there might be benefits, but in the long run, there will be the decline of efficiency of these industries. So there is also a huge risk. And undoubtedly, traditional industries should be maintained because it also bears its own developmental opportunities. And the orange industry, already serving as a great name card for this place, needs to be translated into a characteristic agricultural brand of Huangyan. And spatially, there are 4 villages that grow oranges. If these villages are replaced by industrial zones, the residents will have to be relocated. And the original structure of these villages will be fundamentally changed. But such changes might not really generate benefits as expected by some of them. And such changes, if necessary, have to be taking place in an orderly and reasonable way. And therefore, in this project, we focus a lot on the direction of the changes. The first direction would be land integration, because traditionally,
但是在用地、在组织方式来讲，也有它的不足。那么，如何进行土地整合？再有一个呢，如何尊重当地的这种社会结构、村庄结构，能够保持村还在村民他们还在当地，然后呢，来改善他们的这种村庄的这样一个环境风貌，同时呢，这个提升这个居住的一种宜居性。 并且呢进行这方面就近的这种就业然后形成这个产业的转型和复合以后呢提高他们的收入水平。那么这个呢是一种新的模式的一种探索。那么我们看到这个在这里面也提出了相应的一个规划。
Sorry, Professor Yang, we lost our translator here. The translator should switch in again. Just a second, sorry.
Do I start?
The translator, is she there? Is he there? Is she there? Any reaction? Not yet.
Is that okay?
Yeah, yes, please wait a few seconds. Please wait.
Okay.
Sorry for interrupting.
Okay, I'm online. I'm online. I am online.
Okay, now we can go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
This is interpreter speaking. This is interpreter speaking.
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
So against this backdrop, we came up with the planning practice of Orange Garden, 共居园. So here you can see that we are leveraging designers and planners. And they are also the starting point of integrated development of our society. So in the process of rejuvenation of rural areas, this kind of method played quite an important role. So against this, we came up with this kind of plan. So here you can see this plan, which is 1.9 square kilometers. You can see we can see there are villages, settlements for villagers. And in the south, we can see those organic villages as well. Those villages are actually kept based on the original locations. So in this process, we can see from those maps, before integration of land ownership, the industrialization, because of industrialization, the urban development is grid-based. Because of this kind of grid basis, can bring some convenience to business development of industries. Based on our comparison, we of course keep the original lands, and we also did some adjustments. So the traditional spatial structure can be kept, and meanwhile, it will not be standardized like industrialization does. So by doing this, we actually curbed the low efficiency of land use. And then we can make sure that the land use can be more efficient. And then we also have social integration. Well, of course, social integration must be participated by dwellers, from top down. So we organized meetings, conferences, and we also made plans. Those plans are also revised. It's not like we have one plan and we're going to stick to that. If we're going to have participation of the dwellers, they also make a lot of inputs. So we also listen to their voices as well. So we have, actually achieved a lot. For example, the Orange Annual Meeting, National Orange Meeting takes place every year in this place. So every year when there's harvest, a lot of tourists would come here. In the past, villagers would just pick all of the oranges and then send them outside the village. But right now, a lot of tourists are here. A lot of subcontractors are also attracted here to buy the local oranges. So this is really a very good example of social integration. And this also generates quite a lot of benefits for local people. And then the industrial compounding. So traditional horticulture, because it is also marketplace, and we also have a very good interaction among different, cultural factors. So culture and economy can be integrated because this place has thousands of years of planting oranges. So there are poets and there are some technologies dedicated to this vertical. And we also organize some students to study that. So conclusions to share with you. So here, in this rural-urban interface, we're thinking about how are we going to integrate different resources by better planning. So you can see those are our planning tools. For example, we have some important spatial interference key points. We hope that we can form this kind of link between urban and rural areas based on these tools. Well, I also want to say thank you to our teams for the hard work. We also want to say thank you to the local governments for the support. Thank you. This is my sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, Professor Yang, thank you very much for your presentation. I think several points you raised already, which will we take up in the discussion afterwards. I'm personally pretty much interested in getting more insights into the success factors. So what makes local interventions such as the Orange Garden really successful? You pointed already on social integration and how you organize this. Maybe we can take this up for the discussion afterwards. So thanks again, Mr. Yang.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we will move on to the next presenter, Dr. Bianca Elzenbaumer. She's a design researcher, so she integrates both design and research at the Institute for Regional Development of EURAC Research in Bolzano in Italy, where she works as an individual Marie Curie Fellow at the Alpine Community Economies Lab to envision and co-create bottom-up eco-social initiatives. Again, we are very much grounded now looking on the co-creation and bottom-up processes. She will introduce a case of Vallgarina in Italy, and it is about participatory development. So, Bianca, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much to the URA team for this invitation. I'm really happy to be able to share some of our approaches here in Italy. The way I and my team work is very much with participatory approaches and very much going from collective imagination to action. This is the place where I'm based in Italy, so it's in the Southern Alps, where in fact in the place where I live, I also kind of consider it as a living lab, also because I live there. So I'm a local resident, but also a researcher. And what drives me in this area is to really think that in this place where we live, we think of the economy as what makes us live well, us and other living beings. And in living in this place and doing research on this area, which has about 100,000 inhabitants with a central town of 40,000 inhabitants, it was really to think of how can we approach this place in thinking that we can make the economy of this place on our own. So this is really, I think, on our side, a kind of a dialogue with globalization. How do we, as people living in a rural space, negotiate economic globalization? How do we negotiate how we produce what we need? How do we care for our resources? But it's also a kind of experiment to see how do we relate between humans and more than human others, so animals, plants, and bacteria that also live in our area. And it is clearly also about how does the rural link up with the urban. And to get to a point where I think where we feel a sense of empowerment in this process, it was important for us to frame the economy as an iceberg through the approach of geographers J.K. Gibson Graham. So this idea of seeing the economy, what makes us live well, not just as made up of money or what we gain through working or wage labor and the markets, but also what we do in our neighborhoods when we help each other, when we self-produce our food, when we do work in our families, when we exchange things or work in cooperatives. So to have a stronger sense of agency, that we can actually be drivers in our local development. And we combine this with an idea of looking at commons. And I need to say that in the Alps, there is a very long tradition of commons, so of collectively taking care of resources. And in the past, this was woods and pastures and waterways especially. And there is still a strong tradition of local people bonding up in associations and trying to take the matters of their life into their own hands. So we really much like the idea to think of how can we as a community come together and come on and work together with collective goals to manage the resources that we have so that they're beneficial for everyone. And with these ideas in mind and initially research questions of how can designers contribute to local development with an idea of commons and community economies in our mind. Me and my partner framed the project which should be running over the next 40 years, a research project that looks specifically into commons and commoning in the Alps, starting from our valley. And this project is called Comune Fare, which in Italian simply means doing things together. And this started 5 years ago when from living in a metropolitan area like London for the 10 years before, we decided to move to the place where we think we can guarantee a long-term engagement. Because we very much are convinced that these local development processes need quite long spans of time, and they need constant engagement, and they need people to also be present locally to, on the one hand, have a kind of longer vision of where one wants to be going, but also to be able to quite quickly respond to what is happening, which I think, I mean, later on I will tell you what we're doing now in response to the pandemic and to the lockdown. So to actually be here and to be able to respond because we're physically in this place. So about 3 years ago, we started to work on this idea of opening a community academy at the local train station, where together with other local inhabitants, especially active ones, which we would call agents of transformation. So people who actually, live here, are into agriculture, into social work, into cooperative finance and so on, and who want to be actors, who are active in shaping this territory. We started to create this community academy, which asks what constitutes a solidary and open community today. And especially back then, it was also very much influenced by the refugee crisis, because we were on one of the main roads towards Germany for refugees. So it was quite a change here in the area. And it was also about asking questions about environmentalism. So how do we activate economies that care about the people and the environment? But also, what does it mean if we would think of the community made up of humans, but also other living beings in our area? How would this change our ways of doing? And we had identified the local train station as a hub for this academy. On the one hand, because it's such a central point in our valley, so it's a kind of reference point for the people living in the town, but also for all the other people living in the valleys, because it is the point of departure to go, to leave the valley for new experiences, but also where new ideas come in. And we decided as a group, and this was the initial planning group, we decided to call our academy La Foresta, which means the forest, but it also means in local dialect, the female foreigner. And so we decided for this name of La Foresta because we wanted to create a space where new ideas mingle with old ones that are already here, where we can create synergies between what is arriving at the train station, metaphorically, like what's coming from outside, how we process it and how we take it into our territory, but also where we are in conversation with others. And also this idea of local initiatives nurturing each other and being, and I think this is an important point, that we started out and then the local municipality really liked what we were doing and joined the project. So now we're also collaborating with the municipality of the town and with the governing body of the whole Valley district to think of what can this cultural social space bring. It's quite a new way to mix ideas, the way we're doing at the moment in this space. And as I said, we're try to look at the bigger picture. So we interface with regional planners. We, read UN policies and so on. But we also always try to see, so what can we do locally? How do we make this into something tangible and that gets people on board enthusiastically? So at the moment, we are working on 3 major projects or 4 major projects, which I would briefly like to introduce. The first one is called Comunità Frizzante, so it's called Fizzy Community, and this is about how do we bring liveliness and a kind of interaction with new ideas into the valleys. And here we decided as a tool for opening up conversations about local development to start producing fizzy drinks with local flavors. Of our valleys, what flavors do we want our valleys to have in the future? Are we happy about the monoculture here, or do we actually want the diversification? And then we go out on walks, we pick herbs with people, we pick fruits, but it's always a kind of tool to interact with the territory and open up a very playful conversation about how do we want this place to be developed in the future. And now, as we are in the phase of actually selling the drinks, it's also a very interesting tool to get into the local economy, not only as researchers, but as economic actors who enter into conversation of what are the economic struggles people are facing and how could we team up between different actors to become stronger. And along this line of like, how can we get new ideas out? I also started the Marie Curie project with European funding for 3 years, and where the Habitat unit in Berlin is one of my secondments, so one of my supporting institutions, where now I've begun to more systematically run workshops across the different valleys to invite people to think about what do we want the valley to be like in 40 years. If we imagine that we have been able to create a solidary and sustainable model region, what will have taken us there? How will this valley be? And this is very much about inviting local transformation actors and local politicians, so people working in municipalities, either as kind of administrators, but also mayors and so on, to get them involved in opening up and trying to be more utopian, to allow themselves to kind of imagine the best this valley could be. And from these workshops, which finished just before the COVID lockdown, we're now starting to implement concrete ideas. And so one of these ideas that also came up throughout the workshops was a mobile traveling oven, bread oven, that travels now through the different villages and engages people in issues around food sovereignty and especially around the topic of grain production, because we figured out that there is still a kind of, I would almost say, almost invisible network of local grain producers and mills and so on. And so this is about engaging, how do we create strengths for a kind of local economy that is there, but is still very invisible. And again, this is about a playful engagement. We go to the local parks now with all the COVID measures, so it's a bit more complicated. We go to the local making bread and in talking about food sovereignty. And what we started just last week, really in response to the COVID measures, we started a forest kindergarten, because there was a huge, like in every session that I've run in the 15 workshops, in imagining what the valley could be, there was a strong sense of our education needs to change. We need a much more, we need an education that brings us much closer to our own territory, an education that socializes us not so much into urban lifestyles, but into lifestyles that are rooted locally. And then this whole process of thinking about education actually has been speeding up a lot with the COVID measures, because now our schools are very much don't share, don't talk to any other kids, don't do sports. And so this is a way to break this up and say, we go into outdoor education. If we want to have processes of like commoning, if we want to keep this tradition of collective organizing, we need to keep on socializing our kids, that actually doing things together and sharing is a good thing, and not to keep them so restricted on don't share, be on your own, don't touch anyone. So by being outside, we're kind of getting over these restrictions. And I think to sum up, what we are doing at the moment here in the region is really trying in practice to explore organizational forms. So forms of collective organizing for creating economies that weave together the urban and the rural, but really giving a space to what we kind of playfully call the right to the rural. So as people in rural spaces, giving us the agency to shape the rural places, how they are and how we want to live them. But also what is coming out much more is that there is a huge desire for a right to wilderness, a right to really not just be into agricultural or rural landscapes, but to really be outside and just experience, for instance, in our case, experience the Alps with their more wild side. But I think also there with the lockdown, being locked into our houses for two months, there has come a real surge of like, we want to be outside and connect. So this is something we're very much taking into consideration now, which I think makes a lot of sense with the rapid biodiversity loss that we are experiencing and the climate breakdown. And here in the Alps also, I mean, extreme climate events are increasing quite a lot. So I think this whole connection of like getting back in connection with the territory is something that is quite felt across different populations. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Bianca, thank you very much again for your presentation. Well, I mean, to take up one point which we might address during the discussion is, I mean, how to shape identification of the local people with their region, with their landscape. And both of you, so Professor Yang was focusing on this, these oranges as a product, yeah, which shapes kind of identification. And in your case, it was this regional drink, yeah, creating a kind of sense of ownership of the regional products. And as I have a look at the presentation of Christian Werthmann, he posted signs and said, well, use these signs as kind of identifying yourself with it via using them for presenting art. So it's all about identification, and maybe we can take this point up during the discussion. Okay, we come to our last presentation from Marta from the IBA here in Thuringia. Just some brief words. Marta studied at the Bauhaus University, and she worked in Division of Building Culture in the Federal Ministry. She also worked for the city of Leipzig as urban planner, and Marta took over as director of the IBA Thuringia in May 2014. And let me say, I would say it's already pretty successful, the IBA here, and we are so happy being part of the IBA with our workshop today. So, Martina, it's your floor, and Georg will just check with this guy.
So it's me again, rather successful, but bad internet still. We are still living and working on a building site, but next year then it will be perfect. Thanks to your planning, I directly can continue after that wonderful and impressive examples from Italy. I would like to invite you to Schwarztal. I would have loved to invite you directly to come with us there. It's just 1 hour from here by bus, personally offline, non-digital, but well, so I brought some photos. Schwarztal is located in the Thuringian forests. As you can see, one of the most beautiful parts there. It is a stretch of landscape that follows the course of the little river Schwarza in the middle of this territory and the surrounding hills and wooded hills. It comprises several municipalities, one town that is close to the N of region, and all the others are villages. All together are organized in an official administrative community, I don't know, Verwaltungsgemeinschaft in Germany. It comprises about 1,500 people, and Saalfeld, Rudolstadt and Bad Blankenburg on the right-hand side, which together have some 58,000 people. The region has a long tradition as, of course, a place of work, of living, of industry, but also of foresting, of summer holiday. It's also a summer holiday region. A tradition that broke in different fields off abruptly in 1990 after the end of the GDR. The demographic trend is alarming. However, there's a thriving group of extremely committed local citizens who were not willing to see their region decline and set about founding a future workshop initiative. They ask questions like, how do we want to shape our region for the future? How can we make it more resilient in the face of change? And they are, to this initiative belong, I think, about 80 people. So these are normal people, these are groups, cultural initiatives, but also the mayors of the region, people, managers from the little or smaller and bigger companies in the region, and so on. And they meet frequently, at least once a year, and continue their debate about the future of that region. With our incremental approach as IBA, we thought about what could be strategic points or projects to change the region to the better. And that is one of them, the railway station, the Rottenbach railway station. It is kind of like a gateway to the region where you can get on the train from Erfurt, change to the bus, regional buses, or set off directly on a hike through the hills. The railway is still in existence. It's operating with a regular timetable, 2 sets of railway lines, very directly ways to Erfurt or to other destinations. But the station building stood empty. So it looked like in 2014, when we started with the IBA project, the empty station building was bought from the railway company, Deutsche Bahn, by the municipality of Königssee-Rottenbach, and it was taken into a new use. It was taken over by a cooperative of local stakeholders and converted into a station shop. There are no other shopping facilities in this village or in this part of that little town, and the shop is implemented by a bistro that is also opened on Sunday, what's very specific in Germany and complicated to manage. I'll show you some more pictures. Yes, it was renewed, it was a listed building, and that is a cooperative shop. In my opinion, such spaces of infrastructure constitute the central public spaces in the countryside. I'm also convinced that in many rural regions, general support services and public and private supplies and services can no longer be maintained without the support of the local community, only by state or municipality. Leaving these to market forces alone is unwise, as they fail to provide a competitive return on investment and consequently often rarely survive. So that's why it's very important to bring them into another system, another economic system. It is, well, there's a direct link to the thing Bianca said with the comments, and we are also debating in a debate with Zukunftswerkstatt about these kind of comments in Schwarzertal region. The second example I would like to show is the Sommerfrische. Sommerfrische, I don't know how to translate. It's fresh summer times when you go out to holidays and where the air is fresh and the weather is nice. Yes, and this already in the 19th and 20th century, the city dwellers came to retreat to higher, cooler climes of the valley for their summer holidays. First, it was the prince in his summer castle who invited his guests for hunting. Then in the beginning of the 20th century, a bourgeois Sommerfrische continued for the richer people till a mass tourism in the GDR time. But in 1990, that came to an end. And as a result, we have a strong collective memory, that's the good thing, but it remains is predominantly empty hotels, guest houses, and villas, like this in Sitzendorf, exactly. As a consequence of the exodus of young people from the valley and structural change, there are now many vacant buildings and properties, at least a dozen, if not more. Much of the infrastructure of yesteryear, the post office, the railway stations, as I showed you, no longer play such a central role in everyday life, and they also can be converted to new uses. At the same time, many of the empty properties are attractive examples of local architecture that are built embodiment of a bygone tradition and part of the identity, that is what we are discuss what we are discussing now, on the Schwarzertal. As such, these vacant properties also represent future potential. The Tag der Sommerfrische, the Sommerfrische Open Day, was inaugurated in 2015 and takes place every August. The empty buildings are open to visitors. There are exhibitions, coffee and cake. The residents recount their memories of earlier days or of current new initiatives underway. Every year, some thousand people and visitors come to the valley on one Sunday in the year. The underlying idea is, of course, to create a demand from further afield for the surplus of supply with empty buildings in the valley. That is kind of marketing, but it's also strengthening a sense of identity on the other hand. Open Day, it's more like a festival than a real estate business thing. The holiday apartment in Döschnitz, that's Tag der Sommerfrische, these are the visitors, so they look like in Thüringer Wald. The holiday apartment in Döschnitz shows that the concept can work. A small group converted part of the building, only 2 rooms at the beginning, into a modern and well-designed holiday apartment on their own initiative and successfully rented it out. They worked together, IWA Thüringen, the municipality, the neighbors, the tradesmen, a young architect, and then there was, at the end of a very short process, we had a new apartment in this building. In the meantime, a stable group of 15 creatives and freelancers from Berlin have founded an association to run the project. The Sommerfrische Haus Döschnitz is a place of retreat, but also of research and teaching and exchange with the locality and the region. Ownership of the site will be transferred from the municipality into the Stadtland Thüringen Special Fund Management by the non-profit foundation Stiftung Trias. The Haus Döschnitz Association will become the leaseholder. This same instrument for joint land ownership has been used on another building, Haus Bräutigam. The old house was in a very poor condition, and the Zukunftswerkstatt wanted to save it from demolition, and the owner bequeathed it to a group of committed individuals from Weimar and the region. The young initiative is now repairing and renovating the building for new uses, including providing spaces, that is the building, and that's the building site, including providing spaces for interest third parties. So a similar concept like in Döschnitz. It is funded by public subsidies, so they are now in a building process to renovate the house. A further example is Schwarzborg Castle, which stands prominently overlooking the valleys, but was in almost entirely ruinous state. It was a demolition, not by time, not by bombing during the Second World War, but by the Nazis itself. They wanted to convert that in a guest house of Adolf Hitler personally, and then they came to the demolition, but not to the renovation. But part of it has been made accessible and is to be developed as a think tank for democracy with its very special history, because on the other hand, it was also Schwarzburg, where it is located, was the place where the first constitution of the first German Democratic Republic, the Weimar Republic, was not negotiated, that happened in Weimar, but it was signed in Schwarzburg. So Schloss Schwarzburg, Castle Schwarzburg, is a very symbolic place for all this contradictory development to support civic society, to discuss what kind of democratic and grassroots initiatives we need on the countryside. We are now on a building site. It was open to the public during Sundays. You could visit it with an audio walk to get all the information in it. And I think next year, the only 2 rooms will be finished. This overview sketch reveals a complex assortment of initiatives at a regional scale that together contribute to a larger idea. And that is what I mean when I say, yes, it is, IBA is an it is a very pragmatic approach, but it works into a common idea of how the region could be developed. Yes, and that's why the different projects I mentioned, like Castle Schwarzburg, Bahnhof Rottenbach, Sommerfrische Haus Döschnitz, Sommerfrische Haus Haus Bräutigam Schwarzburg, and other instruments come together in a common idea. By the way, the overarching, uniting aspect is the landscape. So we already worked on this issue, but I won't elaborate on this because we are short in time. All those who live and work in the Schwarzertal region know that the pattern of settlements, the roads, the infrastructure, how it looks like, why the building looks exactly like these, are a product of the specific characteristics of the landscape and their previous and current activities, whether agriculture, or forestry, or tourism are intertwined with it. It's a cultural landscape. This landscape itself is changing, for example, as a result of changing management patterns, but also of climate change. For example, we have tremendous damage to woodland through a decline in rainfall, and also completely new requirements. So, for example, the state government of Thüringen thinks about developing this region as a hydrogen region, and the main, petrol station, hydrogen station, of course, could be located close to Bahnhof Rottenbach. And here we come full circle to Rottenbach railway station again, where the railway lines arrives. The new station shop in the former railway station could acquire a new function as a hydrogen filling station some meters ago. And that's, I hope, not just a pipe dream, it's a declared intention of the Thuringian government, and we are in conversation how to continue these good designs in the public space, also on that technical kind of infrastructure. Yes, so far, thank you very much. Here we are again in Schwarzertal. Thank you.
Yeah, Marta, thank you very much. And to the whole audience, either Zoom or here in the room, give us some few seconds for reinstalling ourselves, and then we will definitely start with the discussion. Yes, and I would like to invite also our Zoom presenters to join our discussion and the meeting. Great to have you back here. Yeah, I think we should keep it in order. We started this morning, so we start with a discussion within our presenters panel first, and then I will open up the discussion and question-answer session to everyone here in the room and into the virtual room of Zoom, the Zoom world. Yeah, I mentioned already that, I mean, seen from our project perspective, it would be pretty interesting to get to know some more information about the success factors. Success factors that make our living labs really living. Success factors that make our local interventions running and operating. And I think we heard already some points on that, but maybe we can elaborate more into depth on this question. And it's not addressed to a certain person here, it's, I mean, addressed to the whole panel. Because I really believe that you all can contribute to this question from all your projects' point of views. So, yeah, I don't know, who wants to start maybe on these success factors? Anyone?
Okay, may I first take
yeah, please, Professor Yang, yeah, great.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Wender. I would like to give some points for these successful factors linkage with our topic. As our topic is local spatial interventions and techniques. I think for the Huangyan Orange Garden case, I think I summarize as 3 points. One is that there is inevitably force supported by the top-down from the municipal government in terms of Huangyan district level, because every year for these 2 years supported for the Orange Garden to cover the infrastructures, the inner roads system of the Orange Garden, because for traditionally this kind of planting that lacking of the support, it's a kind of lower the efficient. So it's not convenient. And the organization for the different families within the villages, they are very scattered and small amount. So it's not possible to organize as a whole for support the people, tourists from outside. So the tunnel water, the network system, and also for some necessary function, the facilities for the rest, both for the tourists and the villages, that's quite important. So I think this is quite important support. The second is that for successful factors from the support of the villages, because at the beginning the villages may not, as a whole, to believe what will finally happen that follow the planning guidance. So step by step, that people changed their attitude and dramatically changed. Now they follow the construction, follow the guiding rule, and they from that the short-term the income sinking to the long-term the value. So I think this is quite important. Finally, I think the third one is much important for the hub. I think we, as a model, we build a hub. The hub means that from professional tools like Tongji University as our planning and designing team, we followed, we step by step to accompany the local villages and the government, and also the some step by step there's some social the investment together. So we plant with the unique role of that university or experts that I call it that the social or it's kind of a non-profit organization within the traditionally 3 stakeholders like the government and the villages, local villages, and the investment or the companies. We as a hub, as a very unique hub within this the previously three driving force. So people, we hear that the planning team, they tightly linkage these three forces, and step by step as they follow our planning goals. So I think for the Huangyan Orange Garden, we are very benefit. I mean, we means all of us, the groups for the four different forces, they are very benefit from this organized mechanism. I call it mechanism. So I think this is, and based on this, we developed a kind of working methodology. We published as like 10 methods of that, the working methods, such as like cultural staking. I named as cultural skating, means that orange gardens, thousands of years, that have a culture and the poetic and the famous peoples. So this is kind of treasures for the tradition, for the culture. So culture staking, we has a lot of plate to print that the poems and from different dynasties and very famous people, and also like an acupunctural way, means for very limited money to do a very important things, acupunctural things. So I think for the first, I give my answer for this. Thank you.
Yeah, very valuable. I think really three important points that we also have to take into account when we start with our additional living labs within our URA project. Yeah, who wants to add? I don't know, Bianca, Alzheimer maybe, or Christian. We start with Bianca, ladies first.
I think I would like to connect to what Professor Yang was saying about the long-term engagement, which he was hinting at with the hub that he's building up. I mean, I don't have an institution like he has behind to work with, but I think also in our case, like our long-term engagement as an association, as a cultural association, and as researchers really helps that people trust us. They trust that we don't just help them to come up with ideas and plans, but that we will also be there when it gets tricky, when the problems come up, and that we will see things through. So I think this is really a key for success, totally. And also what in our case has been very important was to create support structures or economies of support for young people living here. So this sense of like helping people on the one hand with this identification, like you've been saying before, but then also making sure that people have an income or can create small kinds of incomes or can get lower income housing or so on, so that they can actually stay and are not pulled back into the cities, because that's where there is a promise of work and a career, but to give a perspective in this sense as well. This has been very important for us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, another important factor which we are bringing all together. Yeah, Christian Werthmann, please.
I just also want to add on what Bianca and Professor Yang said. And I think the aspect of patience and perseverance are very important. And they're often diametrically opposed to our funding ecology that we have also for funding projects. I showed you a project today that has a 3-year funding. I know perfectly well that this time span is not enough. And it comes out, obviously, out of a 10-year engagement that we have with Medellin. And this project comes out of a long series of investigations that we did without any funding, partially, and just in kind of on the back of an envelope. And so I think that is interesting also if for funding agencies, that I think there should be also a certain trust in researchers that you can do longer research projects. And I love this strength of Bianca, who said, hey, I'm in it here for 40 years, which means that's her professional life. And that's a big commitment. And I think this should be much more supported if somebody says something like that, because too often people switch from place to place because the mayor changes, the government is not interested anymore, there's no funding, okay, I cannot do work anymore, and so I have to go to another place. And I think this erodes trust in research. And I think we have to find different mechanisms to support this type of researchers.
Yeah, for sure, pretty important. Create long-term perspective, yeah, even beyond the project phase. Yeah, yeah, Marta, please, maybe you can add. Yeah.
Yes. Well, as you mentioned, we don't follow the plans. I don't want to oppose planning system too much, but that was not our job and not our approach. What we did was to follow the ideas. What ideas were in that region? Who were the people who invested their ideas and their engagement and their, all that intellectual and mental power in their ideas? And the second step was a kind of assistance. So we helped them just with our professional company, with my project managers. They went out, they were sitting there in hundreds and hundreds of debates, how to figure out how to improve an idea, a very cloudy idea, to make it more precise, to make it concrete, to fund it, to bring it to the local authorities or to state funding programs and so on. And that takes time. Sometimes we experience that we were faster than the actors in the region. Mm-hmm. And I learned that that doesn't help. So everybody has to follow its own timeline and agenda. And that's why it takes time, and that's nothing bad in it. Well, mostly it's nothing bad. But yes, and that's a good thing with an EBA. It's a more than 10 years process, so we are able to give all these ideas time to be implemented. And the third thing I would say is there have two things come together: the idea and innovational things, and the investment. Mm. Finally, you need meanings, either private or community meanings or public fundings from the federal state, Thüringen, or from the federal state in Germany to fund these ideas. Otherwise, you remain in a very theoretical debate, and after a while you come to an end and say, yes, thank you, it was very interesting, or let's change the world a bit. And yes, I think the investment part is not the least important. Yeah, not to be underestimated, definitely, yeah. Marta and everyone in the panel, I was wondering, I mean, I found out there were two similarities through all the presentations we have heard. And I think one was about this creation of local identification. Well, doesn't matter in which way we are creating this, but that might be really a success factor to get the locals really taking up the things, being committed. So I really believe that might be one other important success factor. And another one which was in all the presentations, is you need to identify these local committed people. So I would call them the key actors. Once you have identified, let's say, 2 hands of key actors, you get the living lab running. Is that right? Am I right? Or, I mean, yes, what's your experience within your projects? Who wants to start? Marta, maybe. I can just start, make it shortly. Yes, in Thüringen, I think about 80% of the people love their home. That they say if you have surveys. And so the identification level is very high here, and they love the country, the landscape, the little villages, the smaller towns where they live in, and most people have a very good quality of life, no problem at all, I would say. So that's why they live here. They don't see any need to change things, but there are others, and some people aren't. Well, they want to change things, and these are the key actors. And only key actors change things to something different, I would say.
But how to identify? I mean, question to the others. How to identify the key actors? How do you find them?
Call them. We started with an open call. But
okay, yeah. Yeah, Christian raised his hand. Please, Christian. How did you find your key actors?
In our case, they are naturally apparent. They find you more than that you find them.
Ah, okay.
I mean, if you come with something, if you announce something, if you put posters out, people come and talk. And we have a couple of key actors in the community that are absolutely amazing. Without them, there's no way that we could do this. Yeah. The question of identity is, of course, something, especially when you work in an area like us, in a different culture, that you have to take the lead out of your hands, that they have to lead you, that you don't come with any preconceived notions in terms of, especially when you work in very rough environments where there's poverty, there's violence, there is danger that you see, and they might have a different understanding, and you have to learn that understanding. We also did surveys, and Marta said that in Thüringen, most people are happy to live there, that in this landslide community that we work in, most of the people, they like to live there. They don't want to move away. They know that they are in risk, but they have their friends there. They have a lot of complaints about things that don't work well, but they don't want to go.
Professor Yang, how did you identify key actors being committed within the Orange Garden activities?
Okay, thank you, Professor Wendy. I think really it's quite important questions about how to identify the key actors. In China, even in Zhejiang province, as a village, or the key actors, they are different from place to place, regions to regions, because of the urbanization the regions. Some regions that the population rise very quickly, like in the East Coast area, developed area, and around the metropolitan area, this kind of rural area, they have raised that the land use value, and also the accumulation for the immigrant people. I think these places, the local people, local villages, they are still there. Their properties are rising along with that the urbanizing pace. So for this kind of region like Huangyan, that the Orange Garden, this place that people are living there, and also they it's close to the city, that the property values is higher. So it's quite kind of easier by comparatively. It's easier to convince the villages, and also to organize the people. I think this is quite different. Property, and these people, immigrants, to go out, to go to the city, the population of the residents, they decline very fast. Some people, some villages, even in the mountain area here, that's even vacant. So for this, it's harder to identify the key actors. Yeah. So it's depend on that some creative idea to think about as a whole for the territorial planning, how to organize this, or to how integrate the development. But it's still too important to think about that the historic cultural value of the original decline villages. So I think it is complicated. But obviously that the place to place, region to regions, and it's dependent on that the local conditions to think about that different so-called interventions.
Thank you. So the local qualities which have to be taken into focus for sure. Yeah. Maybe Bianca on this point, and then I would really like to open up the discussion to the whole audience, either Zoom or here in personal in the room. Bianca.
We have been organizing pilot projects to figure out who the local actors are, like the local engaged actors. One was a community garden, and one was a makerspace in a center that hosted refugees. And this was really a way to figure out who are the doers and who are the talkers, to kind of know, because some people were very strong initially of like, yes, this and that, and what could be done. But then when action was needed and effort, they would not be there, whereas suddenly others would become very active. So this was really interesting to see in practice who gets things done. But also doing these projects, and also the one with the refugees, was politically quite a tension. Is it okay to work with refugees? Is it okay to open up? And this helped us to identify in local administration who our allies would be, who we can work with, who has energy and willingness to actually make things happen and to support innovative initiatives. And this has become very important, like those administrators have become very important link with the local politicians, because they can tell us how to take things, how to frame it so that actually we can go on with the project. So this has been very important.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So we open the discussion to everyone. And let me announce to our Zoom virtual community, if you want to join in with the question, please raise the electronical hand you will find in Zoom, or you can use the chat as well, because we have some colleagues listening to the chat. So write down your question or raise the hand and jump in. And let me have a look into our round here in Apolda. Yeah, we have first questions here. Please, Sigrun.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Sigrun Langner from the Bauhaus University, and thank you for your inspiring examples of pilot projects, interventions, local specific interventions. And I would like to make the link to the to this morning, because we talked about guiding principles, long-term guiding images, and so on. And I would be interested in how would you describe this interrelationships between specific local interventions, projects, etc., and long-term strategy in your specific cases. So how is this, or how you would describe this feedback or loops between the concrete pilot project and shaping the long-term strategies, visions, and so on?
Yeah, Marta raised her hand here. Maybe she can react quickly, yes. And then the others.
That's an interesting question. I remember that Iba M. Shapak had a very famous director. His name was Karl Ganser, he's a very smart guy, and he invented in a way that special approach for IBAs, and he called it, in German, sorry for that, perspektivischer Inkrementalismus. So that means our incremental approach, what we are doing, project for project and initiative for initiative, only works if you have a strong perspective for your region or for the territory. So there must be an overall idea to where you go to as a region on a municipal level, or in a regional level, or for the state Thüringen as in general. That's why I find Raumbild so interesting, because it could illustrate what is your idea on a certain level and how it is connected with the official planning documents. But that is essential. It's not only incremental, we do this and that, and everywhere happens every day, things are happening every day. But to have an idea and not only negotiating then these ideas with the people, with civic society, but also be a planner, a professional planner and a champion for the space or for landscape. And you say, well, my dear Thüringen, in 40 years' time, you could look like this. Wouldn't that be beautiful for us?
Yeah, great. Anyone else who wants to react on this question from our panel? Well,
yes, may I?
Yeah, Professor Young, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I think it's a really important question about that, how to linkage with the project with the long-term strategy. I think this is very important, because now we presented as some key projects, some as a very micro level, some typical interventions, but it's really need to think about the meso level or even macro level. As a planner, urban planner, I worked at this. We always keep that the identity of the region, of the city, in mind, to think about that the Huangyan city, because looking back 1,000 years, that Huangyan was famous for the orange city and for Tang Dynasty, so 1,000 years. So I think it's quite important as the city brand about this for their culture and in their DNA. So I think the history, the tradition, they formed as a urban city culture, as a local identification. So for this, so I think it's quite important to link it as Orange Garden, this 4 villages, as a kind of hub for the whole, because this specific location of the city, that it could be not only as a orange planting area, but also for the open space, for the whole city residents. Instead of planting a lot of different trees or green grasses, but we use that orange garden as a kind of a green open space, as a kind of as a meso level. I think this is quite important to linkage with that the single project to the long-term strategy for the city, for the urban identity.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we have another question here in the room, and Susanne Rotter was first, Susanne, and then Our Lady from the United Nations, UN Habitat.
Thank you. I've felt their thoughts about solidarity and communal economy also quite interesting, and I may have a question to both Bianca and Marta. Did you have somehow, because if we think about strategic planning, plans are nice, but somehow they should become reality and a long-term reality. And do you have some thoughts or conclusions about what do we need to change in terms of maybe the municipal budgeting, their household, their framework conditions, in order to make this type of approaches, which are very difficult to actually quantify in terms of economic contributions? And we see in regions with high economic pressure, like in Berlin, they barely have a chance to compete with market-based mechanisms. So can we change framework condition to make planning beyond planning and more reality?
Yeah, not easy to be answered, this question.
But
we have I hope Bianca will help me, because I think you have projects that are already forwarded more than ours. We have a debate, of course, about commons, and I think the key element is land use for very many things. in our regional and countryside situations. It's land use not only for housing, for example, like it is in bigger cities, but maybe that the ground, the properties don't belong in private hands, finally. That's my personal meaning, I must say. That's why we started in Schwarzertal with that with that foundation, Stiftung Trias, to put in some properties into gemeinnützig. I need help from the non-profit association, foundation, and the return comes back and is reinvested in the region again. I think that's also a key element in that cycle ways of food production, for example. So that helps to foster identity, but also the marketplace. If you give up responsibility to a lower level, to a municipality or even to civic society, they have to have something, financial meanings or material things they have to deal with to be responsible. Otherwise, it's theoretic.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe Bianca, a brief answer.
I mean, what we are trying to do is to always in public to have a discourse of what is invisible, like what makes good life happening in the valley and is still invisible, is not honored. And with this, at the moment, we're building a tool, an evaluation tool that is called Values of Values with the Free University of Bolzano to actually visualize what non-monetary goods are being produced and to bring that much more into the open. And I think another step is to really, for us, is work with public administration to say that even when they, they do like feasibility studies and it says like, oh, this is going to cost 5 million euros, which we don't have, so we don't do it. To really go into this place of saying, we take one step at a time and we have people, energy, ideas, so we can make things happen. Even, like let's start small somewhere rather than doing these feasibility studies and then closing things because the money is not there. So to really shift the focus on from scarcity to abundance as well, and what kind of things do we have abundance of, and to really build on that, which we see is, I mean, it's an interesting way to also, I think, build up a self-esteem locally, to not always be in this, we're not good enough, we don't have enough, to actually say, no, we have lots of things and we can activate them. Let's play with what we have. I mean, I'm not sure this directly answered what you were wanting to, but that's kind of my thought on this.
Yeah, thank you, Bianca. We have another question here in the audience, and then I will raise again the Zoom partners.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. Especially I want to say hello to Christian. I met him in Medellin in 2014 in the World Urban Forum. And I think this project is not only 3 years, it might have much more because it's a sequence of different projects that you have been working between Germany, especially Hannover and Medellin. And we were doing something similar with Lima. So connecting with this long-term perspective and implementation by the locals of these co-design strategies or co-inspired ideas, when do we jump from this pilot project to more scale-up implementation that get political will and also influence policies? Because, as you know, our cities have a long story of pilot projects, and these urban laboratories or living laboratories are also experimenting with the people, with style of life. So in your projects, are you considering some strategies that also involve other actors to allow more concrete actions? Thank you.
Yeah, Christian, you're addressed.
I think I might address this, and I think that also ties into the question that came before with kind of the overarching goal and vision, and if there's kind of also a senseless incrementalism that you just do project by project, but they don't add up to anything. And so we are constantly caught between this longer term vision that might never be achieved and changes, and then the day-to-day business. And I don't have an answer for you. I think that out of the frustration that the longer-term planning often fails in very volatile circumstances, when you have just very large forces of economy or war or worldwide migration that throws everything apart that people before you developed 10 years ago. So you have to react to the condition that you find. And then how a pilot project can be something more than a pilot project is a very good question. And of course, I think first it's important that you involve as many actors as you can. And if the pilot project shows some fruitful results, then you hope that it will be replicated. But one has to see it also from the perspective of a lab. You have to do often 1,000 experiments until you find one that works. I think that's the rate of failure is, in my eyes, higher than the rate of success, that it's totally replicated. But it shouldn't stop you from trying to experiment, but make sure that you just not experiment for the experiment's sake, but that you kind of react to what's happening around you in order to make it fruitful. I think that's what we do. And a last word is, I take a lot of respect for Reinhard Goethe at MIT, who worked 40 or 60 years now in informal urbanization. And he says basically, we fail and then we get up, and next time we try to fail better.
Yeah, great. No risk, no success. I mean, that's it, yeah. So let me have a look into our Zoom community. Are there any questions? Please raise your hands or your voices right now. We have one, yeah. Please, can you announce the question?
Unfortunately, we don't have any question coming from Zoom. I do have a personal question. And in the beginning of our presentation, you have showed us the video of the landslides. And in the combination with the COVID crisis we're facing, and the people who are victims to those catastrophes most likely not be the one who argue how important this is. And my question is, I know creating the fear might be an effective way to get attention, but what's in your experience the best way of getting attention? How can we keep a balance of getting the attention to prevent it from happening, but at the same time also not really creating fear among people?
Yeah, who wants to jump in? Maybe it's Christian again.
Can you repeat the question? My connection was breaking up when it got interesting.
Yeah, maybe again. I mean,
give it back to the.
Yeah. It's about how to make people really alert, but I mean, not to make them fear due to facing catastrophes, disasters. So question is going in this direction. Are there any ways to balance both? Make them aware, but not make them fear, yeah.
Well, I would try something. Or,
yeah, maybe Marta and then Christian, yeah.
I'm sorry. Well, people fear a lot of things in Germany. They have such a high quality of life, but they fear if there are too many people for the region and their homes, what happens with Corona, what is digitalization, what does it mean for my job, and so on and so on. And they can't connect it with their everyday lives anymore. And I know, I'm sure that to fear is not a good starting point to make things better. It's just a starting point for become more radical in your group, and that is what happened, especially in the countryside. That worries me a lot. And well, the only answer I can give, there's nothing better than doing things better. Yes, let's start to do things very concrete, very precisely. This little river, open a place where you can reach that water place. To renew a house, to make very tiny things. I don't know other answers.
Yeah, but Marta, this is almost a final announcement, I would say. But to sum up this final question, I think it's really about how to shape positive motivation. That's maybe the take-home message with this last question. And shaping positive motivation, I mean, might be another important success factor for local interventions, living labs, and yeah. So we collected a lot of the success factors, thanks to the audience, thanks to the presenters, thanks to all discussants in the room, and still in Zoom. We will try to find out whether there are some messages hidden in the chat or somewhere. Anyhow, yeah, thanks again. So I will close up this session. We are almost done today. Anyhow, still I would hand over to Philip Misowitz and Professor Young again for giving a final word for today's last session before we enter into our last internal meeting, but that will not be publicly available. Yeah, Philip, maybe you want to give us some few words. Thanks and an applause to the audience and the presenters again, please.
Yeah, I will make it very brief. First of all, I would really like to thank everybody from outside of this project, Christian and Bianca and Stefan this morning, and many other people who spoke to us, who were generous enough to contribute their experiences. And I mean, the spirit of organizing a big conference at the beginning of a project where we have very little to show yet because we are about to start in earnest, is that we want to connect us right from the beginning to a whole community of, let's say, like-minded thinkers and people we can learn from and build them into our project right from the beginning, and organize fora like these to facilitate exchange and learning. So that was really fun for me, and I took a lot away from the two sessions today and also from yesterday. So yeah, we are almost on time, and I don't want to drag this on. I also want to take up Wolfgang's phrase, shaping optimism, you said, Wolfgang, about our project for the next 4 years. So I really look forward to this and meeting all these guests from today also again. I would like to thank everybody who made this possible. I really would like to thank my team at Habitat Unit first, Hannes and Gauju and Eva, most of all, who spent night and day in the last few weeks to make these simple, smooth-looking, but actually incredibly complicated, multi-layered hybrid conference possible. So thank you very much, team, and I'm deeply impressed. All right, and then I also would like to thank, obviously, all these technicians there in the background here in Weimar and also in Berlin. And I would like to thank Marta, who for her generous invitation. This wonderful setting here that only a few of us can actually enjoy, but hopefully all our Chinese friends and also international guests will come at a later stage. And Yang Guiqing, I will pass on to you for the final words.
Thank you very much, Philip. It's quite impressive for the successful 2 days conference. It's very productive. And thanks all the participants, and especially for the URA project PIs from German side, and also all the PIs teams from the Chinese part. And especially thanks to Professor Philip Meswitz and bring us together to take this quite important, significant project for the following 4 years. I would like to thank, and we were doing hard together and really do the very high quality academic and bridge that the scientific and policy dialogues together and make things happen. And I would like to borrow Martha's saying just now, let's become better, start with doing things better. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you. Oh.
Das ist auch schön, ne?